Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome to my workshop. Today I'm going to be taking you through how I built the fence and the power for my router table. Let's get to it. Using the remains for the board I used to make the router table, I cut the base for my fence. I then used the track saw to cut a rebate. Whilst this can be done on a track saw, I'm not sure that it's very time efficient, and it also had to be tidied up with a chisel. One of the main uses of my new router table will be making rebates and dados. I then cut what would become the front of the fence frame. I made 6 of these triangular supports. They will brace the front of the fence to its base and also be used to form the dust extraction port and the brackets for the electrical panel. The base and front will need a hole cut in them to accommodate the router bit. This was done with the hole cutter on my pillar drill. My drill press table is really handy and I can recommend making one of these. See the video description for a link. I then cut out the slots using my restored bandsaw. I have 3 plans for 3D printing a dust extraction port for the Burgess bandsaw. Details in the video description if you're interested. I then glued up these parts, taking extra care to ensure that they were square, and when the glue was dry I glued in the triangular supports. I made the dust port hose adapter using an offcut of 18mm ply, which I squared up with my miter saw. Incidentally, I struggled to get consistently square cuts until I modified my miter saw. I'll leave a link in the description on how I did this. I used a cheap Chinese Forstner bit to cut a slightly undersized hole. This hole will be used for the dust extraction port. I want a tight fit, so I opened it out to the correct size using the oscillating spindle sander, and then glued the parts to the fence. I'm going to be using M8 bolts to hold the fence to the table, so I'm going to pilot and then drill a 10mm hole to give me a little leeway in positioning the fence onto the table. The face of the fence I decided to make out of an old kitchen carcass, mainly because it had a hard melamine type surface. I think overall this was a mistake. My saw doesn't make very clean cuts, so I'll probably change the face at some point in the future, but it will be fine for now. The face of the fence will comprise of 3 parts, a top part that will accommodate a T-slot, and 2 lower parts that will slide in and out to accommodate different sized router bits. Here I'm creating the dado for the T-track. I need several passes to get the correct width and depth before I can screw it into place. The lower parts of the fence face need to slide, so I used the router table to cut some slots. I then fit some threaded inserts into the back of the lower faces. I chose the chipboard for the front of the fence because of the melamine coating it's got on it, but I think at some point I shall probably just change it and use plywood because it'll look prettier. This it's got chips and things in it, doesn't look that great, but I can loosen the knobs at the back to move it backwards and forwards. I can loosen the knobs that hold these on and then widen or shorten the gap to accommodate the router. So it's got all the basic features that I need. So I'm pretty pleased with it. I shall probably change it some in the future, but at the moment it'll mean that I can do some routing and hopefully improve the quality of what I've been doing. I'm going to fit the electrical system under the router table at the front of the bench. The part I'm cutting out here will be the main board that everything will fix to. Here I'm cutting out the corner so that it doesn't interfere with the hinge. The two remaining triangles that I cut out earlier will be used to make a couple of brackets for the electrical board. Well, I think it's compulsory to make one big mistake per project. Here I labelled the part incorrectly, so I've glued the brackets upside down. Luckily I realised before the glue dries and I can fix the problem. I screw the back of a metal socket cover to the board and also fit the box that will hold the emergency stop button. I'm not going to provide too many details of the wiring. Regulations vary by country and I'm not a qualified electrician. However, in the UK you don't need to be a qualified electrician if the wiring terminates in a plug, which this will. The general idea is the emergency stop switch will control the electrical supply to the double socket. And I'll use this socket to power the router table and other power tools. Now the wiring is done, I can glue and screw the board to the underside of the router table. The switch can switch 3 poles. I'm only using the live and neutral. The earth is connected all the time. To make the emergency stop button, I cut a small piece of wood. I fix a piano hinge to the top of the switch. Then I cut another piece of wood that will be used to activate the switch. And because this is going to be fitted under the bench, I screw a spacer to the other side of the hinge. I then use some super glue and accelerator to fix this piece to the underside of the bench. So this is the view from underneath. I have my extension lead that goes to the workbench where it was originally mounted. The double plug socket that I've now fitted plugs into the master of that extension lead. The slave is still used to control the vacuum, and then the emergency socket switches the double socket on and off. Using the knobs at the back I can adjust the width of these two plates on the fence to accommodate the width of the router bit that I'm using. The T-track is going to be used for either stop blocks or for a feather board. I can also put a feather board across these two. If I turn the router on, I have to lift this up and turn it on, and I just tap the red button to turn it off, which is quite a nice feature. This red button controls both of these sockets, so it can be used not just with the router, but it can be used when I'm using other machine tools such as the miter saw or the track saw. So that's quite a handy safety feature to have on the bench, and it all folds away. None of it gets in the way of putting it away. I've kept this slightly behind the edge of this surface, and that's so if I want to use the whole length of my bench and I need this edge free, perhaps because I'm cutting something with the track saw, then I know that this isn't going to get in the way. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I've really enjoyed making it, and I'm really happy with how the electrics and the fence have turned out. If you did, then I'd love a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, then it would be great if you'd subscribe. Well, that's it for this video. I'll see you in my next video. Thanks for watching.